How long do you want to wait, Elena?
No, you can start. Sorry, I was
Okay.
just setting up the recording.
Okay. I have a short, long presentation. I can go really fast with it, but also talk a little bit longer on it. We have more or less 20 minutes. So I will see if I also have some time for the examples, what we do with our office related to this subject of EU taxonomy. Maybe it's good because it's very important, and it's talking about sustainability. And a lot of times when I'm talking with Ukraine professionals, there is a non-clear understanding what sustainability is. So let's start. Maybe it's super easy, everyone knows, but it would be good to also start with from the beginning. So what is sustainability? And there's a very wide diplomatic text what how the UN, the World Commission, thinks about sustainability. It's a long sentence. It's a legal explanation also about long talks between countries, etc. But for me, it would mean don't harm yourself, others, the world, now and the future, because it's more about if you do things, if you act. That you think further than only the simple investment what you're making at that time, and it's bigger. Maybe it's also good to zoom out and to talk about the climate crisis. In Ukraine, you have the war, of course, but the world also has a very big problem. It's also in the Ukraine. And it's the world climate crisis. It's basically because we're with too many people on this planet. It's also not a surprise for you, and it's also resulting back in a lot of atrocities at the moment: fires, flooding, droughts, etc. Name it. It resulted in this Paris Agreement in 2015. It's a legally binding and universal agreement, so that is the most interesting part, is that it has a legal status. And if you zoom in back to Europe, we're also dealing with the climate crisis. At the moment, when I was on holiday, there was a flooding in Slovenia. Before the holidays, there was the fires on the Greek island of Rhodos. At the moment, there's also on Tenerife Island. But the Paris Agreement resulted in the European Green Deal. And these are the answer of the European Union, how to implement this Paris Agreement in the European politics. And then, this is what the presentation is about, the European Committee Union designed the EU taxonomy. It's not a word that you heard a lot of times. You will hear it more and more often. Maybe not in the Ukraine at the moment, but the presentation is to give you already an understanding, because I know it will be affecting the rebuilding of Ukraine. So the EU taxonomy is a tool that is made by the European Union to deal with the sustainability measures in the European Union. So what is it? It's an assessment system. So it's more or less what you also can say. It's a label. It's a sustainability label. So not qualitatively, but on the quantity. So they want to avoid that everyone is talking about sustainability, and in the real time they don't really do anything with it. So the EU committee designed the EU taxonomy to have a proof, a measurement proof that all the investments, what you do in your assets, are sustainable. And the EU taxonomy system is a classification, so for the sustainable economic activities, and it's diverted in a variety of sustainability measurements like biodiversity, climate mitigation, climate adaptation, water, clean water, circular economy, and pollution. And the main question is, why should you comply? As not even as a European Union, not as a Ukraine party, but as a developer, an investor in the European Union. And there are four main reasons that it's very interesting, or why you should comply to this. It's a law, by the way. It's not a kind of a regulation. It's really a law. For now, at the moment, you don't have to comply. The only thing is that if you say that you're sustainable, you have to prove with the EU taxonomy that you are sustainable and how sustainable you are. So if you choose not to be sustainable, at the moment, that is still possible. But if you say it, so if you are using sustainable measurements in your investments, in your assets, then you have to comply in the European Union to the EU taxonomy. For shareholders, it means that you are, they ask on the market, they ask from investors how they comply with the EU taxonomy. If they don't, they have a different value on the financial market. You have a reputation, because in the European Union, more and more companies that are not sustainable are also avoided in the investments. If you have your measurements sustainable, compliable to the EU taxonomy, then it's easier to get finance, green forms of finance. And in the end, it results that if you have a high value on your EU taxonomy, finally, in the end, your investments, your assets are worth more. So it has also a financial component, and that's the most interesting, because before, if you invested in sustainability, your assessments were not worth more. At the moment, with this EU taxonomy, it will be. So it's not for everyone. It's for the bigger companies. It's for the real estate companies, the financial parties of the commercial real estate, and it's for mortgage lenders. So for banks, for instance. Finally, but it will be not in 1 or 2 years, but finally, it will be difficult if even a private person wants to buy a house that is not sustainable. He will not get a mortgage, because the bank will ask to the private client, will ask, how sustainable is your house that you bought? If it's not sustainable enough, they will not get a mortgage for it. So it will also affect the private persons in the European Union. Now, it's for very large institutions. In the European Union, it's written down which companies are considered large, and that's covered in Article 8 and 9 of the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. You can look it up further. There are companies thought with more than 500 people, more than 14 million of revenue. So not everyone, only the bigger companies at the moment has to comply to it. But if the bigger companies want to work with other companies and they're not sustainable, the bigger companies have a problem. So the bigger companies will ask finally on the later in several years that also their subcontractors are complying to this EU taxonomy, because otherwise their investments or their assets will not comply to the EU taxonomy, will not have their value. So the question is, when is your asset complying to the EU taxonomy? So there is written down in the EU taxonomy, it's a very large document, but one section is about urban development, and then it's dealing with new buildings, renovated buildings. If you have energy efficient measurements like solar panels. It's one section about charging stations. Other one is about the systems that are measuring energy in the buildings, renewable energy ownership. They will check it on the climate targets. So they will, for instance, see is it how does it deal with the mitigation of climate change? Is it avoiding pollution? Is it protecting the ecosystem? So they have this main 6 measurements on how sustainable it is. And there are 3 criteria. One is that each measurement, what you did for sustainable measurements, what you did should have a substantial contribution. If you have only one solar panel on a very big project, it's not substantial. The other thing is what this I have a look at is do you do any significant harm to the environment? So if you have a leakage or etc., then you are not complying to the EU taxonomy and you don't have this compliance, and you will not have your higher rating on your assessment. And the other one is the minimum safeguards, the minimum values of each measurement, what you do, how it affects in the total amount of sustainability what you have for your project. But what does it mean then for Ukraine? Because this is a European story. At the moment, your mind is not at sustainability. It's about war crisis and it's about rebuilding. At the moment, strong and proud at the border of Europe. This Ukraine is also meaning border country. But you also have a goal to integrate with the European Union. And I think the green and sustainability part is one of the keys for the integration in the European Union. But this is really also a talk what I had with one of the mayors in Ukraine. I asked him also about sustainability. How do you deal with sustainability? And this was his answer. Yes, Patrick, emergency help is very important. Rebuilding is what we do first, then housing, then schools, then industry. And then we have a lot of other important things. And yes, then we do the most important things. We do the sustainable measurements. But that is not how sustainability is meant. It's also not how sustainability should be implemented in the rebuilding of Ukraine. And why should sustainability be first? And I think this is the most part that is the misconception. Sustainability is something you add. Sustainability is doing still the same things, still having help, still doing rebuildings, also emergency help. The only thing is, if you can do it with less harm for the planet, less harm for yourself, less harm for the ecosystem, it's about making different choices. And why do you have to make these different choices? Because now you have a war, but we also have a climate crisis. We also have a world that has a really big problem at the moment. Also, the rebuilding will ask a lot of finance. The finance that Ukraine at the moment doesn't have, and also not directly after the war. So the economy at the moment is not at the best stage because of this war investments. Then you come at 5, you need foreign grants and investments. And in order to hook on also on the international financial markets, especially the European financial market, if you start rebuilding, one of the main things they will ask investors is this investment sustainable or not? If it's not sustainable, it's still possible to get money. It's still there, but gradually over time, and it will go very fast. Sustainable projects are easier and more valuable at the end. So that's a thing to think about for the future. And there's also a lot of benefits, of course, when you comply to the EU taxonomy for the Ukrainian market. So you can prove that your choices are really sustainable, because there's no question about if you follow this EU taxonomy. If you don't follow it, you always have to question, yeah, but how sustainable is it? How can you measure it? Now, the EU taxonomy is an agreement that is stating what is and what is not sustainable. In the European Union, to get finance also, it's a law. So it's not that you think it's an opinion, etc. It's a law. Right, and then especially later on is that you will know that it's financially more profitable to have the sustainable projects instead of the non-sustainable projects. So even in the longer term is even that non-sustainable projects are not fundable even anymore. Now, and I think even if, because there will be a lot of rebuilding, because there's a lot of energy also, especially what we also do this evening, is think about how you can rebuild. If the sustainability part is maybe also a chance for Ukraine to be a leading party in this whole worldwide transition to a sustainable environment and society. I don't know if I have a lot of time, so if needed, I can also shorten it very quickly. But I want to also explain a little bit that it's not something extra, but it's in the heart of each project, even in our office in Orange Architects. And we have for ourselves a sustainable tool. It's not exactly the tool of the EU taxonomy, but more or less 90% the same. We are now even trying to change it to that's more EU taxonomy compliant. So this is the tool we use, world we value, 3 pillars. It's about resources, world. It's about the resources. Can we have less materials? Can we have energy that is from wind and solar or from the ground? So not from the fossil fuels. The we is how you live together in these buildings, and value is how can you create the context that is, if you build it, your building or your project, that also the surroundings is has more value in the end. We have a whole system for this. We test our projects during each design phase and at the end. And it's also for us a tool to see how sustainable we are working for ourselves. And I want to show you one project that has also 2 BREEAM awards, and it's also tested by the Dutch DGBC. It's a Dutch organization that is delivering the BREEAM, and they're also testing the EU taxonomy. And the EU taxonomy and BREEAM are more or less for 90% the same. And they tested Jonas on the EU taxonomy, and it has a fund number of 9, because 6 is the classical projects, 8 are the sustainable projects, and 9 are the high sustainable projects. Jonas is tested in the EU taxonomy as a number 9 investment. It also got 2 BREEAM awards. And how we did it, it was also with participation in the beginning with the neighborhood. We have a very compelling story for the project, how you live in a big project. We have also diverse logical programs and identities inside the building. You can also more or less see it as a 3D living landscape. It's an apartment building in Amsterdam. It has on the ground floor landscape, commercial program. It's publicly accessible during daytime. And we have different areas in and around the project. The rock is in the front. It's a landscaped area before the building, for the neighborhood also. It has biodiversity in the building and in the shore of the project. For these birds, and you have even mussel reefs inside. Then you come into the living room on the front of the building where people can meet, and also from the people that live in Eiburg, so in the neighborhood, but also in the building, so they can meet there. When you go through the building, there's a public street through the building with a spectacular space. We call it the canyon. It's a gallery space also for the entrances of the apartments. Then later on at the back of the building or the other entrance, there's a small forest. Yeah, the trees are just planted. There's a lot of birds' nests also in the facade inside. Here are all the locations for the different types of birds. It has a kind of a stepping down that you can also, with a boat, you can enter the building. We have inside a mountain path that you can walk from the first floor to the roof terrace. So it connects also all the gallery spaces, and that you don't use the elevator, but you walk through the building. So it's good for also for moving around in the building. On the top, there's a beach roof with a water feature also even in it. It has a lot of solar panels. Also, the housing is mixed with sales and mid-rental apartments. There's collective space inside the building, as I told also from the living room. Different types, yoga space, cinema, a bar, workroom. And the whole building, it has a concrete construction with 35% of recircular concrete. It has a wooden facade with zinc cladding. Here you can see the detail of it. And even in the architecture, there's a very nice detail on the face itself. So on all levels, it's sustainable. So you don't see it from here. But it's fully integrated and it's designed from the beginning. So showing the whole story about the EU taxonomy as maybe a boring law, but it will have a big impact on the financial of your project. An example, what it could be. So the EU taxonomy sustainability also explains not as a nice thing, but maybe as a must. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Patrick. Hey, it's not a building, it's an urban block.
It's an urban, yeah, it's a small city, but yeah, that's true.
In what city with urban block?
It's Amsterdam, Eiburg.
I think when we do the excursion for the Ukrainian municipalities, we should definitely use it.
On a Monday then, because it's very strict, because there's so many people visiting the building at the moment that the client said it's only possible on a Monday.
Okay, good to know.
No,
I
but it's
think
definitely good to see what is possible, and it's not even on the also when the building price in the end it was a little bit bigger because of problems with the contractor, but the building price was 1,800 euros square meter in 2019. So that was more or less an average building price. It was not too high.
nice.
Do we have questions about the EU taxonomy?
For me, interesting questions of security, not war security, but of climate security, because now climate involved very change, and you diagram present how change climate, and every year involved biggest землетрясение, Лен, подскажи, пожалуйста. Землетрясения, катаклизмы, ураганы.
Earthquake.
Yeah, earthquake.
Yeah, but that's the earthquake. This is not part of the sustainability. This is part of construction. So anyhow, this the safety is already regulated in standard building law. And it's the same. Let's say, for instance, in shelter for a war shelter inside, let's say, inside a small bunker in a parking garage or etc. It's not a sustainable measurement. It's about safety or an extra regulation, what you will have in the building regulation. So it's not for investors, let's say not for normal, it's not about, as we said in the beginning, what is sustainability is that you don't harm yourself, someone else, or the planet. If you don't have a bunker or you have a bunker, it's about safety, but it's not harming. It's about safety that someone else is doing something to you. So it's not part of it as a sustainable measurement. It's an important one, but it's not part of sustainability.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, there's two parts to sustainability. One is how you do things, so how you build, how you make projects, but another part is why. So maybe, sometimes not doing something is a more sustainable measure than doing something like building something.
Building in itself is non-sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
to do what you have to do in the most sustainable way possible. I think it's
So maybe one thing, because now with the EU taxonomy, the main good thing is why we as designers, as Orange, are happy with it, is that sustainability for the first time gets a value, and before it wasn't. And then it's very difficult for investors, because investors are people that don't have a face. That's just it's the law of finance. So if you have 1% more income on your investment, the money will flow there. It's not about it's not a moral choice. It's a financial choice. And now the morality of sustainability gets a financial impulse, and that's a good part of it.
Do you see it being abused in any way? Like, is there any loopholes that
Of
developers
course, there will be. At the moment, it's so fresh that there is no misuse at the moment, because it's very fresh. It's now for 2 years or something. Now there's a new law that also smaller companies, well, I think before it was companies with 250 million, had to comply to the EU taxonomy, but they don't have to. They don't have to do sustainable measures. The only thing is what the European at the moment says: if you say you're doing sustainable, then you have to prove and conform the EU taxonomy what you do sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So Shell can have an EU taxonomy report, but it's a zero value. But it will be, this mark will be on the investment, zero value on EU taxonomy. What it will do, it will be in number 6 investment. It has this value of this. And you see big investors like pension funds, for instance, they will have a look. Okay, what are we going to invest in? We're going to invest only in only sustainable funds. And the Shell is not sustainable, so Shell will not have this money what they wish for. And then the assessments will, or the investment from them will drop in value. That's the idea on the whole taxonomy.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. Stimulating what the right things to do.
Yeah. And I think it's very important. Okay, for now, even small companies to say, for us it's not relevant, but it will be relevant later on. Even if you have, let's say, if you now build something and you directly sell it, at the moment you don't have influence on it. But let's say in 6 years, and it's not maybe in the Ukraine market, but in the European market, if you build something and it's not sustainable, and people want to buy it, and they go to the bank and they ask, I saw I want to buy it, can I have a mortgage for it? The bank says, is it sustainable? No, you don't get a mortgage. There will no people that buy his investment, in hers or his investment. So that's how it will, through the back door, will also work.
Yeah, and basically, if Ukraine wants to join the EU, then it has to already think about it.
Not only, let's say, if Ukraine doesn't integrate in the European Union, but it wants to make big projects and they want to have investors, let's say they want to have money from the European market investing in Ukraine, but if the investment is not sustainable enough, it's very difficult to get the money from Europe, even from the European Union. The European Union will say, okay, we want to give a lot of money, but you have to do sustainable projects. So how sustainable is your project? Is it sustainable? Then you get the funding. And I think it's not for emergency housing. The demand will be less, of course, but I think for the next after it, so the midterm, the long term, especially the long term. And that's why it's also very important that Ukrainian professionals, as a quick course, what is sustainability? How can you implement it? What is it? What is it not? Yeah.
Mykola, do you know maybe if VNG has this on the radar and if they're doing the courses and lectures about it? Because I think it's really important.
I think it's very interesting. I can ask VNG. Patrick, maybe you can send this presentation in our group WhatsApp. I sent this information in VNG team and ask. I think this very interesting.
Yeah.
Share it in the WhatsApp or send it to you, Elena?
Maybe you can send me, you can send in our group in WhatsApp, no problem.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
In any case, the video of this lecture will be uploaded to our website as well.
Yeah.
To YouTube, sorry. Okay. Alexandra and Roman, do you have questions?
I would like also to add that it is really important for Ukrainian markets to become sustainable, because now not a lot of projects are not sustainable at all. And if Ukraine investors would like, or thank you, Patrick, to explain how it works in Netherlands, that just people can't receive loan or mortgage at the end if the project is not sustainable. Yeah, as far as I understood.
It is not at the moment, but it will be in some years. Yeah.
Thank you, and stimulation for a market to start doing things in a sustainable way.
Yeah, but I was on Lutz 1 month ago, 1.5 months ago. I was in a workshop. There were also professionals, architects. Also had a discussion with them about sustainability. I asked them, what do you do about sustainability in your projects? I had 3 people with 6 eyes like this, because they didn't understood what I meant with sustainable measurements in their projects. They didn't know. They really didn't know what I meant with sustainability. So it starts also with designers. So maybe investors want it, but if the designers don't know what to do, it's also especially for the designers, because this is the first party, maybe with the investor, of course, to push for this, for this road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any more questions, or do we wrap it up?
Roman, maybe you have question.
No, unfortunately, I'm not a good speaker on English.
Okay.
Якщо це легше, можна на український чи на російський, ми переведемо.
Але мені потрібно передивитися відео. Використовує перекладник трішечки.
Okay. So maybe there will be questions under the video later.
Okay, clear.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Patrick, and thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next week.
Goodbye.